Well, President Biden, he announced on Thursday, we haven't seen you guys in a few days, so we got to go through all the updates on the immigration news. He announced on Thursday that he plans to increase the cap on the number of refugees allowed in the United States after Donald Trump slashed it to 0. Now, Biden is aiming to raise the refugee cap up to 125,000 people, which is a big rise from Trump's 15,000. And as a matter of fact, once COVID hit, he reduced it to 0. Now, Biden, in a speech at the State Department, says, I'm approving an executive order to begin the hard work of restoring our refugee admissions program to help meet the unprecedented global need of refugees. He added it is going to take time to rebuild what has been so badly damaged. They're not going to be able to ramp up and get 125,000 people in this year, but it's a lofty goal. There's no way they're going to be able to process 125,000 refugees, not after Trump basically, tore it down to the ground. He also needs Congress to approve that number, but since the Democrats control both houses, I assume that number will pass, perhaps not this year, but by next year, they should get to 125,000. Meanwhile, Biden also said that the immigration bills that he is giving to Congress to pass, all the various amnesty bills, he's not opposed to doing it in piecemeal, meaning it's not going to be one huge legislation that passes that gives everything to everybody all at once. Instead, he wants to do it piece by piece, get things passed that are easy to pass, and hopefully get other things passed that may not be so easy to pass, but he doesn't want to hold up the easy stuff while they're negotiating the harder stuff. So as an example, the first sign that something is going to happen was introduced an immigration bill dealing with the Dreamers. That is, of everything that Biden wants to pass for immigration, that has the most bipartisan support, both Republican and Democrat. And more than 75% of Americans are in favor, 3 out of 4 Americans are in favor of passing something for the Dreamers. As a result of that, that's going to be the easiest thing to pass. Now, a bipartisan bill, it was authored by Senator Dick Durbin and Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who is a huge supporter of Donald Trump. So a huge supporter of Donald Trump and Dick Durbin, who has been authoring this DREAM Act for over 20 years. They're calling it the DREAM Act of 2021. The actual legislation was introduced into Congress. This is the first immigration bill that has been introduced into Congress where there is now going to start a debate on it. And it's going to provide young people an opportunity to immediately apply for lawful permanent resident status and eventually citizenship. Now, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival program created by Obama in 2012 was a first step. But this DREAM Act of 2021 is going to be a much bigger group of people who will be included in this, if it passes, and it's expected to pass, than what Obama did for the DACA program. The DACA program was just work permission and deferred action. That's exactly what it stands for. Deferred action, meaning that even though you're a deportable alien, we're going to defer that action. We're not going to deport you. And instead, we're just going to give you a work permit while we work things out and figure out how to get you legal. That has left about 2 million young people in limbo. But what about all the young people who didn't qualify for the DACA? What about all the young people who came at a young age, but were here for such a long period of time? They're in their middle ages already and still haven't legalized yet. Well, the DREAM Act of 2021 is hopefully going to fix these problems. Now, applicants of the proposed bill, if they meet the following requirements, are going to qualify for conditional permanent residence status immediately. They have to establish, now this is not law yet, but this is a bipartisan bill. Lindsey Graham and Democrat Senator Dick Durbin have introduced it. A Trump supporter and a Democrat have put together this bill. So this may very well pass very soon because it seems to have support from both parties. It is going to establish, and you can get conditional resident status if you fall in these categories. You have to establish that you were here before the age of 17. You have to be physically here and have continuously lived in the United States for 4 years on the day Joe Biden signs the bill. Okay? We don't know when Joe Biden is going to sign the bill, but let's assume he signs it sometime in spring of 2021. That means that you would have had to have been here under the age of 17 by spring of 2017. Now, obviously, you're going to have to pass a background check. You're going to have to demonstrate good moral character, no felonies, no multiple misdemeanor convictions. You're going to have to submit to biometrics. You're going to have to submit to having your biometric data processed. And you're going to have to also, obviously, go through a medical exam and make sure you don't have any communicable diseases. Now, in addition to all of this, you're also going to have to demonstrate that you are in college, you can apply to college, you have earned a high school diploma or in the process of earning a high school diploma. And obviously, there's going to be an application fee that you can't get out of. That will get you conditional permanent resident status. In short, you're under 17, you've been here for at least 4 years, you graduated high school, you're in high school. If you graduated high school, you're in university, or you have already graduated from university. That gets you conditional resident status right off the bat. Now, eventually, in several years down the line, and we don't know how many years that's going to be, it's going to be negotiated out, you're going to make an application to go from conditional resident status to permanent resident status. Now, before I even get to a permanent resident status, under the Obama DACA plan, you had to be under 30 on June 15th, 2012. If you were over 30 at that point, you don't qualify anymore. With this, there is no over. It's only under. You had to be under 17 and been in the United States for 4 years when the bill passes. Doesn't matter. You could be 50 years old right now and still qualify. Now, once you get the conditional resident status, you're going to have to apply to remove those conditions. You're going to have to maintain continuous residence in the United States. You can't leave and go live somewhere else. You will have had to have demonstrated to get your permanent residence that you have at least graduated from college, a 4-year college, or you've done at least 2 years of a bachelor's degree towards a 4-year college. Or if you don't want to go to college, you did 2 years in the military, or you can show that you have worked for a period of at least 3 years on the books and have paid your taxes. You're going to have to demonstrate an ability to read, write, and speak English. You're going to have to pass an American history test like you do for citizenship. Again, you will have to do another background test. Again, you're going to have to do a demonstration of good moral character. We talk about good moral character all the time. Again, you have to show no felonies, no multiple misdemeanors. Submit again to the biometrics, submit again to background checks, and then pay another fee. But that's going to legalize millions and millions and millions of people who came under the age of 17 and were living in the United States for at least 4 years when Joe Biden signs that bill. I have confidence that is going to pass. Now, there's going to be another bill that gets introduced shortly, TPS, amnesty for people with temporary protected status. I think that has a pretty good chance of passing as well. The harder thing is going to be the amnesty for everybody else. I think they're going to have a harder time passing that. I'm not saying they're not going to pass it, but there's going to be a lot of give and take. Something is going to be given up in order for them to pass, ultimately, an amnesty for the rest of the people who did not qualify for amnesty under DREAM Act and amnesty under TPS. What is that going to be? I don't know, but I can imagine some scenarios, and I imagine the scenarios because I've seen the negotiation happen over the last several decades. Republicans want to get rid of family immigration. It's very possible that to negotiate out a full amnesty for everybody, that they may end filing for brothers and sisters. It's possible that they may end the visa lottery. It's possible that you can't file for your adult children who are married. You know, they're breaking up the different amnesty bills. So there's going to be an amnesty bill for the Dreamers, which we just went through. There's going to be most likely an amnesty for a TPS. And the reason they're breaking it up, like I said at the beginning, is they feel certain bills are much easier to pass than others. So DREAM Act will be easy. It's being bipartisan support. Lindsey Graham, who is a huge Trump supporter, he's introducing this bill.
Wow.
Okay. They haven't introduced the amnesty for the TPS. It'll happen shortly. I believe people with TPS who have been here for long periods of time will be able to get through as well. How is this going to work? Well, that's going to be harder because as you get to everybody else, there's less support within American society. There's still a majority support for an amnesty for everybody, but less. You know, when you say, 3 out of 4 people want the Dreamers to be able to get a green card and ultimately become a citizen, I can't tell you honestly that 3 out of 4 Americans want every person who's undocumented here to get a green card and become a citizen. It's going to be less than 75%. It's going to be harder to get Republican support for that. So right now, the way that Biden is doing it is for Dreamers, a TPS, and then an immigration overhaul. That'll be the third bill. So when you do immigration overhaul, that's not, I'm just giving you amnesty. That is, we're overhauling the system. And as part of the overhaul of the U.S. immigration system, if they can strike a deal, the deal will be, we're going to give amnesty to everybody else. Anyone who is undocumented will get an amnesty. But there's going to be a give and take. Politics, we didn't see this in the last 4 years, but politics is supposed to be the art of compromise. So there has to be a give and take, a compromise, because many Republicans and even some moderate Democrats want to see immigration overhauled. What would an overhaul look like? So I was talking about it. Perhaps there would be no more filing for brothers and sisters. Perhaps there would be no more filing for adult children of U.S. citizens. Perhaps there would be no more visa lottery. Perhaps they will tighten definitions of what an aggravated felony is. People who commit crimes may have less chance to stay in America. I could envision a situation like that in return for an amnesty for everybody else. So that's going to be a harder give and take. That's going to be a political game. That's why they're breaking it up. That's going to be a political game. DREAM Act, that'll pass. That's got bipartisan support. TPS amnesty for TPS, most likely. This amnesty for everybody else, there's going to be a lot of give and take. We'll see how it all pans out. That's what's happening here right now. Okay. So you're going to see the bills come in different parts. And the harder bills to pass is going to be more, we have to overhaul immigration and give something to Republicans to get the amnesty for everybody else. Under the DREAM Act of 2021, this is the bill that is now being debated in Congress. We don't know what the final bill will be. But what it is if you are here under the age of 17 and you've been here for more than 4 years when Biden signs that bill, you can be 40 years old, you could be 50 years old, you can be a 90-year-old grandmother. If you came under the age of 17 and you graduated high school and you do 2 years in college, 2 years in the military, you have 3 years of work experience to go from conditional to permanent, you will get the DREAM Act.
Thank
and
you.
what it'll be is they're not going to make people, the reason they're doing a conditional first, is they're not going to make people first graduate from high school, then do 2 years of college. You just have to be on track to be doing it to get your conditional card. But to get your permanent card, you're going to have to demonstrate that you actually did it. I think it's ultimately going to happen. I think DREAM Act will happen first. It's going to be in stages. Then it'll be TPS. And then it will be an entire immigration overhaul where certain groups of people will lose in order for people who are undocumented in America to win. Who are those certain groups of people? Could be people applying for the visa lottery. It could be brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens. It could be adult married children of U.S. citizens. I can see all of them losing in order for undocumented people in America to win. I could see that. I'm not saying that's fair. I'm not saying that that's how I would want it to happen. I'm just giving a reality check to everybody. What I think is going to happen. I could be wrong. We'll see. The Senate has started their second impeachment of Donald Trump today. Now, GOP Senator Pat Toomey says it is very unlikely that the Senate is going to vote to convict Donald Trump, especially since 45 Senate Republicans previously voted to suggest the trial should not go forward. Now, the reason why I believe Donald Trump will not, they came up with a constitutional argument that you can't impeach somebody if they've already not in office. So what are you asking them to do? You're saying you should leave office, but you've already left office. So, and that's the constitutional argument. You can't impeach somebody if they've already left office. Too late, you know? But, you know, I think the Democrats had a really good response to that. You know what their response was, Vanessa? Their response was, if you can't impeach somebody who already left office, then basically what you're saying is a president of the United States or a vice president of the United States in his last several months of office can do whatever he or she wants, break any law he or she wants, and have no repercussions from it, because by the time they break the law and impeachment happens, they've already left office. So
yeah, when we started, I'd wonder how that would even work.
Yeah, so basically, if you buy the Republicans' argument, you're saying the last couple of months, it's free for all for any president. They can do whatever they want because there's no repercussion to it. So, you know, from this perspective, I agree with the Democrats. Impeachment is just to go down in history and say you did something wrong. I mean, that's the repercussion. I mean, he's already out of office, but that doesn't mean that what he did was right. He started insurrection to prevent the Electoral College from voting. The Senate passed a budget resolution, $1.9 trillion for COVID relief. It came after 15 hours of amendment votes. This is what's going to be in the COVID relief package. $1,400 direct payments to Americans. $400 added per week to jobless benefits through September 2021. Whatever unemployment you're getting, you will get an extra $400 every week. $350 billion to state and local governments, a $20 billion national COVID vaccination program, $50 billion for corona testing, $170 billion for public education, and every person who has children in America between birth to 17 is going to get a $3,000 tax credit on their tax bill, which will give them a much bigger tax refund. That's that, all right. So
tax season's looking interesting this year.
What'd you say? I'm sorry, Vanessa. I didn't hear what you said.
Tax season is going to look pretty interesting this year. Yes. Everyone's
like, "Ooh, tax is very interesting. I'm getting bigger checks this year." According to statistics from Johns Hopkins University, that is our university of choice. When we say the coronavirus statistics, 106 million coronavirus cases worldwide. More than 2.3 million people have died. 59.5 million have recovered. In New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo has announced we could eat indoors again. As of Friday, just in time for Valentine's Day. And you know what? You know what Uncle Brad did? I ran to the phone and I made dinner reservations.
Really?
I love eating in restaurants, and I'm like, you know what? If it's only 25%, then I better make a reservation because it's good. Everyone wants to go out for Valentine's Day. Everyone's been cooped up in their apartments. I'm tired of eating in a blizzard, on a street corner, on a cold. You know, it's cold.
Let me tell you, I went to brunch last week and I ate outside, and it was probably one of the worst experiences ever, just because you have a little heater on the top of your head. When I tell you that my toes were frostbitten, it was the worst. Like, how can you even enjoy your food?
You know,
so I'm here for it.
You avoided COVID but got pneumonia. That's basically what's happening.
Right.
Okay. So he also announced, Governor Cuomo, that New York City middle schools are going to start resuming in-person learning on February 25th. You want to know why? Because the teachers have gotten the coronavirus vaccine. And Republican Representative Ron Wright from Texas, he's a Republican. He was not really a big believer in COVID. He has tested positive, and within 10 days of testing positive, he died, 67 years old. Now, that follows the first Republican. This is now the second representative, congressman, to die of COVID. Representative Luke Letlow from Louisiana in December, he died. He was 41. Representative Ron Wright was 67. Both, ironically, Republicans who were both congressmen who didn't really believe in masks.
Talking crap.
Yeah. Yes, I didn't wish them to die, but just, I don't want anyone to die, especially our leaders. But
why do we have to wait for someone to die to believe that this is actually something we should be taking precaution for?
Now, medical professionals are also trying to figure out how to stop the UK and South African virus.
Oh, please, dude.
Yes. Jeez. The South African virus, South Africa, they stopped the AstraZeneca vaccine rollout in South Africa. The AstraZeneca vaccine is the English vaccine, the one that came from the UK, from Oxford University. And the reason is that in their trials, they found that the UK vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine, did not prevent illness from the South African coronavirus. Also this year, by the way, we're coming to the Chinese New Year. It was last Chinese New Year, and I'm not being Donald Trump, but I mean this is reality. When people from China traveled all over the world, and that's when Italy ended up in a lockdown and everything else. That's how, if you believe that coronavirus came from China, I'm not saying it came from a lab. It could have came from a bat. Who knows where it came from? But it did originate somewhere in China, and it was during this Chinese New Year in mid-February of last year when a lot of people from China traveled around the world, and that's when it started spreading like crazy. So we're at that 1 year mark right now. China has asked their population to stay put. Very sad news when we're drinking our tea. It's very sad news. Mary Wilson from the Supremes, she died. Did you hear about that? She was one of the founding members of the Supremes. So Wilson passed away suddenly at her Henderson, Nevada home. And she was a trendsetter who broke down social, racial, gender barriers. She was born in 1944 in Greenville, Mississippi. And not long after her birth, her parents headed to St. Louis and then Chicago. As a 3-year-old, Wilson was sent to Detroit to live with her aunt and uncle. And she lived in the Brewster Douglass projects where she met fellow singers Deanna Ross, Florence Ballard, and Betty McLeod. And by the time she was 15, they had become the Primettes. And Ross coaxed her former neighbor Smokey Robinson to introduce them to hitmaker Berry Gordy. Can you imagine all these people were in the same building?
It's ridiculous.
Is that ridiculous? What talent they had in this one building? So Ross coaxed her neighbor from the building, Smokey Robinson. That's the craziest thing. It's like the most talented people in the world all lived in this one.
All lived.
Detroit.
Right there. Detroit had them all.
Yeah. To introduce them to Berry Gordy and Motown label, Gordy thought they were too young. Now singer Barbara Martin replaced McLeod. They finally signed with Gordy's Motown label as the Supremes in 1961. And then the rest, obviously, is history. 12 number one hits. Where Did Our Love Go? Baby Love, Stop in the Name of Love.
All of the hits.
Yeah.
The amazing thing about her, I do want to say, I've had surprisingly a lot of people in common or a lot of my friends that have met her. And I know a lot of producers for different anchors for different news stations, and they all say that even though she was a legend and icon, she was one of the most sweetest persons, even to the last days. Right. And it's wild because I literally saw a video that she posted on her YouTube 2 days ago, looking very healthy, beautiful.
And what a different, Diana Ross is known as a diva, so what a difference, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not that Diana Ross isn't a nice person, I don't know, but I'm just saying her reputation as being a diva.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a sad.
Right, but I love their music. Yeah. Love. I may actually now I may tune
go back and listen.
I'm gonna go back and listen. I think tonight.
Yeah,
you're gonna have
funny thing.
tonight.
Yeah.
Funny thing, when I heard about her passing this morning, I legit, not the first thing, but I knew that we were going to talk about this, and I knew that you were going to say that you like their music, because you have good taste in music.
No, I
knew you were going to say that.
I actually love Diana Ross. I love the Supremes.
Amazing.
They're amazing. I love all that music. I love Motown. And you know what?
There's
I grew up listening to it.
Yeah. Motown.
Yeah, I mean, I only know her through her music. I don't know her full biography, but and obviously never met her.
That's
but
the music gets even better.
But I'm gonna listen to her music tonight. It's the only thing I can do to. I want to now.
Yeah, me too. I've been listening to her all day. So.
Have you really? I've been working, but I'm gonna put her on
Motown.
Tonight when I go home.
I just been listening to Motown hits, and it's just like you said, it's just amazing to even know that these people were all just in the same area together, and so much talent, so much history, legendary. So this one hurts though.
Yeah. I was listening to Tina Turner all weekend. Had nothing to do with this. I was just into Tina Turner this weekend. So, but I think I may listen to the
Supremes.
Yeah, Diana Ross and the Supremes. Yeah.
Yeah, you should.
All right. And meanwhile, did you see the Super Bowl?
I did.
What a snooze fest that was.
A snooze.
Snooze of the biggest snooze. I couldn't.
The game to the halftime.
The halftime. You know what's so funny? Well, I don't find this funny, but my son Zachary, he thought the weekend that was the best halftime show he ever saw, and I'm like, well, maybe I said maybe because you like the music.
How old is your son?
What?
How old is your
19. Son? I said maybe because you like the music, but I thought it was a snooze. I thought the whole thing was snoozy.
I was already mad at the fact when I found out that he said he wasn't bringing anybody else on with him, because usually we
bring some guests on to get excited,
Right.
He said he wasn't doing it.
But he doesn't really dance. He doesn't really perform. He just sang.
Which is why you bring somebody who would dance and who would perform.
Right, exactly. That's why I said it wasn't, I'm glad you like the music. I like the music too, but you just sat there and sang.
Show.
I grew up watching Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Listen, I grew up watching Super Bowls where Janet Jackson, Michael Jackson, Prince, you had all of these big time iconic people performing. Even when Beyonce performed, it was just like, so energetic.
Or J-Lo and Shakira, they killed that.
J-Lo and Shakira were amazing last year.
Amazing.
They were amazing.
Follow that up. You're the Weeknd. Like, you got to step into some big shoes, and he didn't.
Do you know? I always listened to J-Lo, but I never really listened to Shakira before the Super Bowl last year.
Oh yeah.
And then I even think I told you guys. I said I'm listening to Shakira now. I loved it.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
you did. I will say a big shout out to the Weeknd for being Ethiopian and representative.
Wait, you're breaking up, Yo-Yo. What? You're breaking up. What was your shout out?
Breaking up.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah. What was your shout out?
I said a big shout out to the Weeknd being Ethiopian. So that's a big thing for our culture. Culture, represented on the halftime show, like that's a huge thing. But I do wish that it was.
And
I didn't know.
And then activist and poet Amanda Gorman, who was the country's first ever National Youth Poet, recited an original poem before the game. I didn't see it because I didn't make it to where I was watching it till almost the end of the first quarter. So I did not see her poem. It was called Chorus of the Captains, and celebrated and introduced the 3 honorary captains: Marine veteran James Martin, Los Angeles educator Tremaine Davis, and Tampa ICU nurse manager Susie Dormer. And then Mariah Carey, there was a PSA, but this was a serious PSA by the NFL pledging to end systemic racism. And that PSA was in the middle. It was during the commercial breaks. I watched it. You would have noticed also, if you were watching very closely, the NFL officials were wearing hats that read "End Racism." So, and this ad to the NFL that to pledge its commitment to end systemic racism, it was played right in the middle, right when most people were watching. But many viewers found it odd, considering Tom Brady's a vocal Trump supporter, and the NFL released Colin Kaepernick from his contract in retribution for his political protest that started Black Lives Matter. I mean, I don't want to say it started it, but that was the spark that started it for sure. You know, his kneeling during the National Anthem to draw attention to systemic racism, that started everything. And they didn't even mention his name. Nothing. He didn't, his face, nothing. That's
why I really wasn't here for all of the commercials and all of the little hoopla that they were given, because it's like the black population took their money and their views away from the Super Bowl years ago when, you know, they weren't supporting.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden they have all of this. I was just like,
Yeah, it's like people are they're over it. Like it's as if it was just under the rug. Yeah.
I mean, all the other commercials were kind of fun and funny and fine. It was entertaining. But if you're going to do something, then you got to do it the right way. You just can't say Colin Kaepernick didn't exist.
Right.
Okay. And then not only does he not exist, he's still not in the NFL in any capacity.
Nope.
In zero capacity. Not as a player, not as a spokesperson for racial equality for the NFL. What about that position?
And they could easily change that, but they don't. They don't want to.
Now, meanwhile, singer Mariah Carey, she agrees. She agrees, Yo-Yo, with you 100%. She tweeted, "Happy Colin Kaepernick Appreciation Day," and she was not the only person. Another person on Twitter said, "The NFL creating a commercial that shows players kneeling, putting Breonna Taylor on the back of their helmets, and ends with the league committing $250 million to end systemic racism, must have had at Kaepernick 7 feeling some type of way, but he was never mentioned."
Never mentioned.
Nope.
That's wild.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's a slap in the face. And I think it's an ego thing, you know? This is just all about money. I don't think they really care. I mean, we all know they don't really care. It's all about money. If they did, then they would have had the person that started the whole movement come there. But it was a slap in the face to them. They said that he disrespected the NFL. They said they disrespected, he didn't represent the league well. So, you know, obviously they're not going to have him on there, which is why if they don't do the right thing, I don't take that as any type of support.
Well, I'll tell you what NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell said of Kaepernick. And this is what he said last week. He said very clearly back in June that we wish we had listened to our players earlier, and we had a lot of players that were coming and bringing these issues to us. But he doesn't mention Kaepernick's name. He should have listened to our players.
Let's keep it generic.
Yes. Thanks for watching. For more Brad Show Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.